evening. I am board certified OBGYN Dr. Danielle Jones, better known online as Mama Dr. Jones, and I am a science communicator and OBGYN. I'm so thrilled to be back for Period Piece Talkback number 3, and I'm excited to introduce you to our Talkback group tonight. Today's discussion is a discussion with the artist, and I'm so excited to introduce you to everybody. Period Piece director and co-creator Karen Carpenter, Period Piece conceiver and co-creator Susan Cinoman, Kirsten Greenidge, playwright and Period Piece monologue for Perfect New Day, and Shahadi Wright Joseph, amazing actress who you just saw play in the Perfect New Day act today. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for recording. Okay. I'm so excited for everyone to be here, and congrats to all of you. I mean, it's been really an incredible 3 weeks, and it's been super eye-opening. As a viewer myself, I've really enjoyed just the wide range of storytelling, and I've so appreciated how inclusive the whole event has been, from age and race to religion and gender. I'm interested, Susan, as a conceiver of Period Piece, for you to tell us a little bit about where the idea came from and how Karen and Tracy both became the co-creators with you.
You're muted.
Great question, Dr. Jones. Originally, I had done some work for an organization called Days for Girls, which made period products for girls in Zambia who were not allowed to go to school when they had their period. And so this organization provides little kits for them to be able to use that are washable, that allows them to go to school. I was very moved by that organization and that idea, and consequently met Dana Marlowe, who is the head of the organization I Support the Girls, which does they have a similar mission. I was really, really lucky to meet her and to get to know her organization. And I'm a writer, playwright, who has worked with Karen Carpenter. And I was very lucky to know Karen, who had experience in putting together many stories on a stage, in a theatrical situation, which was what I thought we needed to do to get this mission across and to help people to connect through their stories about their periods. And the icing on all of our cakes was our knowledge of Tracy Knight-Narang, who became our inspirational producer, and her partner, Terry Nardozzi, joined with her in that regard. So that's sort of how we did it together.
Great connections all the way around.
Yes.
And was everyone totally on board from the beginning, or did they take some convincing to see your vision?
I would say that they were pretty much on board. And I've talked to people about this before, how there are some projects that you try to have come into being and they run up against stumbling blocks and they just don't happen. But this one just kept sort of, many yeses would come, and it was almost like it insisted to be born as a piece, in terms of the other writers. They just were also inspired, these incredible performers. Everybody just kept saying yes, 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 yes. And finally we had Period Piece.
I love that. A play usually has maybe 1 or 2 playwrights collaborating, and sometimes that can even take years to write and find a producer and develop. But Period Piece has 36 playwrights, is that right?
Yes.
And so essentially 36 vignettes or mini plays, and it took you 6 months from start to finish. So from the sidelines, for me, I was kind of contacted about this just not very long ago. And of course I was all in. Yes, I'm more than happy to be involved, but it seems so ambitious. I mean, how did you do that? How did you make all those pieces fall into place so quickly?
I'll take it.
Yep.
So I think one thing that was very important to us from the outset, very important to Susan and our producers, was that the playwrights be commissioned to write, that no one was actually going to write without being commissioned for the piece. And we knew we wanted the biggest diversity we could encompass, not just to use the platform responsibly, but to really reflect our world and make it an event that everyone could embrace, and get excited about. And so it was important for us to include non-conforming genders, non-binary, trans, as well as, incredible, racial diversity, age diversity, and ability and disability. So because we felt that the mission being to destigmatize menstruation, everyone has something to say about that. I mean, over half the world's population menstruates. And so what are people thinking, saying, doing about it? We've been, we were encouraged for too long to sort of hide it and make it go away, but let's bring it out in the open. And then once we bring it out in the open, whose stories do we need to hear? And we need to hear a lot. So Tracy Knight Narang was very ambitious for the project, because when it was first, percolating, it was like 10 writers.
Right.
And Tracy said, let's do 3 nights. Let's do 36 writers. And when you have 6 months, you think, oh, sure, I can handle 36 mini plays, because I do think of them each as a play. But instead, because of various issues with like the contract and the writing and finding all the writers and doing all the casting, it came down to rehearsing and shooting it in 6 weeks, which was a mountain.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is incredibly impressive. I'm in awe, because I am not in this space at all. And it seems like this should take years and years. And I'm so impressed with all that you all have done. Last week, I got to talk to some of the playwrights about their inspirations for the monologue. So Kirsten, I would really love to hear your inspiration, how you joined the period piece team and why you chose to write about this mother having a discussion with her daughter about a hysterectomy.
I came on board when I got an email from Tracy that said, we're doing this piece. Would you like to be involved? And I got excited because I got excited by the multiplicity of the voices, about being involved with so many voices about this topic. And at the beginning of the process, that we had 2 calls. I was on one of them, kind of like a brainstorming about what the piece was about, and with all the writers and the conceivers of the project, and kind of reassuring us that the breadth of topics around periods, of what we not giving us permission, but kind of inspiring us that, like, think big and think broad. And that kind of opened up my imagination, that there were many different ways to approach a piece about one's period. And I got to thinking about my experience with my own family and my own mom, about her experiences with periods, and with her own period around the time when I was 15. And so I went autobiographical, and thinking about how many of us who experience periods, just the rubrics, the mechanics of paying for your period, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's not just buying one size tampon or one size pad. It's a lot of product, and how do you afford that when you are not of means? And I remember when I was mid-teens, and my parents got divorced, and I went from being able to afford that and not really thinking about it, to thinking very quickly, to being like, how is my family affording this, when we had 2 and then 3 teenage girls all at the same time? And suddenly resources became really, really scarce, and kind of like hoarding period products in our house, and being a little bit afraid to have that conversation with my mom, like, oh, who's going to pay for this? And knowing that it was not covered when we were on what was then called food stamps or EBT cards, now those not being covered by public assistance. And that was shocking to me when I was.
That is, and it's still jarring to me. And that's, one thing that I think I Support the Girls has done such a great job of addressing, but obviously this is still such a larger problem of period poverty and inability to access products, when it's something that is required. It's required to live your life. And, that kind of even circles back to the products that are reusable for the girls in Zambia, because these are things that really change people's lives.
Yes, we have 2 stories this evening that you'll have seen that deal with this from, again, a diverse perspective. Well Done Scotland also addressed period poverty from a different person's point of view. similar problem, but very interesting, variety of perspectives.
So
And
Kirsten, folks, oh, go ahead.
Scotland took 4 years to pass that legislation. I think that's in the story.
It is.
You
It's
know,
in the story.
and there's a story in the news today about Texas, and there is the issue of taxing menstrual hygiene products because they're considered luxury. They're not considered luxury. They're an absolute necessity.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Something needs to change in all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I see, firsthand in my clinic all the time. And so I'm glad that there are people who are outside of the medical space bringing that to a bigger understanding so that more people can understand that. Focusing in a little more, Kirsten, on your piece, I noticed, she's folding laundry. Dawn is during the discussion. And I'm wondering if I'm reading too much into it or if that setting is purposeful. Is there some element of control or being neat and tidy that goes with that? Or is that just happened to be the setting that you had this happen in?
I wanted to create a relationship between mother and daughter, oldest mother and daughter, and making sure that we were making connection between this oldest daughter taking on a lot of responsibility at a very young age, and that being built into the relationship to each other. So that was definitely the idea that she's doing laundry. She's preparing for this time when her mother will not be in a home with her, and that definitely laces in threads into their conversation with her mom. And I think in a lot of my work there is a thread of, yes, being clean, being tidy, being neat and presentable, and what that means for someone's psyche as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And even just from my personal standpoint, teaching sex ed, I often encourage parents, don't sit your kid down and try to have this conversation and make it awkward. If you're talking about these things, do it when you're doing normal day-to-day things. Make it normal, make it natural. Don't make this a taboo that encourages them to carry like this uneasy feeling with them. And I think that kind of circles back to you, Shahadi. You're the youngest person in the period piece. Was it awkward for you talking about periods, or how did you react when you were asked to do this?
Yeah, not necessarily, just because my mother and my parents have always been really open about it. And, I remember when I got my first period, it was actually like on set while I was working in LA. And I remember how shocked I was, but I was almost ready for it because my doctor had been telling me that it was probably going to come soon. But I was so nervous just because I've seen my sister having her period and her being in pain and all of that. So I was really nervous about it. But I was actually very lucky to have such a normal dialogue about it before I got mine. So I was kind of prepared, so I feel very grateful for that, because I know that a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't even, they're not even educated on their period, and, they make mistakes, and it's crazy. So I feel very thankful that I have my parents.
Yeah, I love that. And, I think your generation is making the changes that we need to see in this area. I mean, being a doctor who's all over social media and TikTok and YouTube, I mean, your generation is just not afraid to talk about periods, even like mine was. I'm only 35, but I still remember it, just like we didn't talk about that when I was in school. So I love that. And the way you kind of describe your personal experience is really very similar to Dawn's. I mean, she's brave and tough, but she does seem like she's also a little bit scared. So was there a process of finding, the character of Dawn within yourself? How did you kind of portray that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that Dawn and I are a little bit different just because she has more of a I think personal and really deep connection to her period, and even her mother's period. I feel like there's such a deep and personal connection to it that I don't really have. I don't really find it to be that important necessarily, but I really do love hearing different perspectives of other people's periods, not just my own. So it was very fun to embody a character like that.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, there's a really, go
and
ahead.
when we started working on it, I remember we were talking about you, and I said, do you have sister?
Yeah.
And you said, I have an older sister. And you said,
Mhm.
actually, in some ways, the character reminds you of your older sister.
Yeah, most definitely.
And so you could draw on that, right? So that's part of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
definitely, yeah.
and you did such a great job portraying that. So, I mean, I can't imagine being as young as you are and as successful as you are in all of these things. So congratulations. I mean, truly, you're doing amazing work.
I think the line that maybe stands out is, you don't need to have any more because I was perfection. You didn't need to have any more children after me. I love that line. But I also think there's an amazing thing that Shahadi started to point out about her relationship to her mother, which is her mother started having complications, medical, biological complications, having held on to whatever transpired between the husband, who is no longer in the picture. The father is no longer part of it. And they are now living with the mother's parents. Yeah. And Shahadi's character talked about the fact that, you know, this is the womb that housed us and fed us, and now you're going to have a hysterectomy, and the very thing that housed us will be gone. And that's a profound thing to be thinking about as a 15-year-old. Like, yeah. I thought that was an amazing point in Kirsten's story.
Yeah, I think so too. Me at my age, I don't think that I would have thought that deep about it if my mom were to get a hysterectomy, but I can tell that there's such an emotional connection to that she really feels very strongly. So I love that as well.
And that the absolutely affected her health. Like that's an incredible thing. I think we carry a lot with us in our bodies that manifests. And that's one thing that I think Period Piece has addressed every single night.
Yeah.
In some way, in some aspect of like how what we experience day to day affects how it affects our periods.
Exactly.
And it's such a universal experience between, I mean, people who are going through the process of getting a hysterectomy when it's needed, of almost mourning that as a loss, even if they are done using it for that purpose. So I'm sorry, there's someone knocking on my door. I'm not going to answer, but I appreciated that part of the piece too. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, Period Piece is so much more than just a piece about periods. We have talked so much in all of these talkbacks and in all of the plays about the inclusivity of age and race and gender. So why were these things important to you to make sure you wove into this?
It really was part of the original inspiration or the original impulse. You know, I think that it just came as naturally as the idea came. You know, that like Karen was saying, once we came up with the idea that periods and menstruation needed to be demystified, destigmatized, you know, the myriad of people who were experiencing it in all different ways just kind of was coupled with that from the beginning. And so when you think of different people, you think of different people, you know, and there are as many perspectives as there are different types of people, you know. So it was a very organic, I think, connection between those two.
And we did, Kirsten has alluded to this, but we did writers' rooms. We did 2 writers' rooms at the outset where not everybody was able to participate, but we got the majority of the writers together on those 2 evenings and just sort of laid it out as, think of this as a stage piece. Don't think of it in terms of this medium. Think about, you know, free yourself from that, because we'd all been, you know, stuck on Zoom for like half the year already by that point. But also here are a whole bunch of jumping off points. Here are a whole bunch of prompts, images, because we really wanted to cover the gamut. We wanted, you know, hilarity and tragedy and, you know, stylistically to run the gamut. The writers that we invited and commissioned were really brought on for their voice.
Yes,
and the kind of work they do.
Not just diversity, external diversity, but the diversity of their sensibilities. You know, so we had people who write comedy, people who write, you know, more abstractly, just as many many different kinds of writers. That was so much a part of the DNA.
Yeah, I love that. And it did such a good job of bringing in all the different cultural viewpoints too. I mean, so many of these pieces are just about a person's cultural experience and how that relates to their menstrual experience as a person. So I love that. Was it hard to switch it? You know, you talked a little bit about Zoom burnout and trying to design these as if you were on the stage. Was it hard to kind of get this into a streaming kind of platform, or did it just move seamlessly over?
Well, there are challenges. I mean, when we were shooting Shahadi this week, for instance, and God bless you, you were so patient, and you know, we had everything set up, and then there's all this noise on the street, and we had to keep delaying. I mean, it probably took us an hour and a half to capture that, right? Because
yeah, it was a lot.
how do you sustain for an hour and a half where you know you have to shoot? I mean, you were in rare form every take.
Yeah, I mean, I knew what we were, you know, getting ourselves into when we first started. I knew that it was going to take a while, but I did not know that there was going to be so much noise outside, and there was like construction as well. So we were really just I was trying to really get into the character so that I couldn't like get out of it, and I would have to like start over with the process again. So I think that we had a lot of fun with that as well, because we got to change things up, and, you know, we really got to play with the character throughout this whole experience, you know, not just the shooting. So I really had such a great time with it.
But one of the challenges of working remotely like this is, you know, when you're directing an actor in a room, I mean, I'm an empathic person. I can feel what they're feeling. And I don't necessarily have to employ my other senses to the degree I had to on Zoom, where really you have to be really seeing what's there and really listening, because you have all this distance. But we were, you know, we had people shooting in London and California and Arizona and like just all over the place, right? But it is about also getting all the technical aspects of it out of the way, because you realize that actors, I mean, thank God for Shahadi's father, Kevin, who helped us get everything set up so that she could focus on acting. But there were lots of actors who did not have any assistance. So they're having to do all the lighting setup and the camera setup and the framing and the focus and everything. And then forget all of that and get ready for the camera and focus on acting, which is their real role in it, right? That is their expertise. Usually there's all kinds of other people doing all those things for them. So I appreciate and applaud. I mean, it's taken 100 artists to create Period Piece, really over 100 artists, like 36 writers, 36 performers, and there are graphics designers and animation and sound. I mean, I've had brilliant collaborators for the titles, and Emily Rawson and Twee McCallum. Editors, we had a great guy from MCM Productions, Stephen Calagridis, was so patient with everybody and literally talking them through. Now you do this, and trying to be like, let's just get all this out of the way so you don't have to worry about it anymore, and you can act. Like that's half the challenge right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine. I mean, that feels like doing all the jobs at one time. I can't imagine then having to just sink into a character while doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been really great. Unfortunately, we're really out of time. And I've so enjoyed moderating these talkbacks and hearing, you know, from a completely different side of the world than I'm usually involved in. And being able to do this has been a real joy. So thank you so much for being here and chatting with us. And for everyone who has come to Period Piece over the past 3 weeks, thank you for supporting us. I can't wait to see where this show goes. It definitely has a life, and I'll be excited to see what's next.
On behalf of everyone, we thank you so much, Dr. Jones. It was so wonderful watching all the weeks with you, and your insights were amazing. We appreciate it.
And you've been great in the chat. Thank you for being really active in the chat and answering people's questions and like cheering everybody on. That's been a really powerful thing. I just want to also thank all of the audiences that have tuned in. We do hope to publish all these pieces as an anthology. So I think it'll have a really huge impact ultimately in the world, even stage aside, you know, but obviously our fondest hope is that it'll have a stage life. But thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.